woke him up. He was having sex with me. I was trying to fight back.
One 24-year-old woman was left in a male holding cell for an hour. It only took minutes for things to go south. Another woman was locked in the same cell with 9 men. The guards didn't intervene, and she never slept the same again. You'd be shocked how many times a female inmate ends up in a male prison, and how often it gets swept under the rug. And the consequences? Let's take a look at them. DC jail incident. In February 2021, a 24-year-old female inmate was mistakenly placed in a men's holding cell for...
How they do that though? I don't know.
For approximately 1 hour, becoming exposed to a highly inappropriate and distressing situation. The events began on February 3rd, 2021, when the woman was arrested on a misdemeanor simple assault charge related to a domestic dispute that had occurred on January 26th. The dispute reportedly involved a physical altercation with a man in a vehicle where she allegedly used a weapon, causing injuries. Following her arrest, she appeared before a judge via teleconference and was ordered to be released on personal recognizance with a stay-away order from the victim. What should have been a straightforward process of release instead became a nightmare scenario due to what the DC Department of Corrections, DOC, later described as an operational error by DOC staff and a violation of agency policy. Instead of being processed for release, the woman was mistakenly placed in the Central Cell Block, a holding area designated specifically for male inmates at the DC Jail's Central Detention Facility, CDF.
How'd that work out?
During her approximately 1 hour detention in this male holding cell, the woman alleged that a male inmate performed a sex act in front of her. This exposure to sexual misconduct, though brief in duration compared to some other cases we're examining, nonetheless caused significant emotional distress to the victim. The doc promptly acknowledged the error after it came to light, issuing a public statement that recognized the severity of the mistake. This apology, while immediate, did little to mitigate the psychological impact of the incident on the victim. Her family expressed strong disapproval, with a family member stating, "This cannot happen to another woman." They indicated that they were considering legal action against the DOC and the DC jail, though no public
And they should.
records of a lawsuit specifically related to this incident were found in subsequent searches. The psychological impact on the victim was significant. Reports indicated that she was receiving treatment for PTSD following the incident, underscoring how even a relatively brief exposure to such a situation can have lasting consequences for mental health. Marion County Jail. In March 2014, a 28-year-old female inmate was erroneously placed in a male cell block, sharing space with 9 men.
Are you kidding me?
While no assault was reported in this specific instance, the circumstances highlight systemic problems that put inmates at risk. This incident occurred on a Tuesday morning between 8 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. The female inmate was mistakenly housed with 9 male inmates, and while the exact duration remains unclear, it was long enough to raise serious concerns about facility operations. Importantly, unlike some other cases we've examined, the female inmate did not report any allegations of assault or wrongdoing by the male inmates. The error was only discovered after the woman's attorney called the jail, prompting immediate action from authorities. What makes this case particularly troubling is that it was not an isolated incident, but rather the second such mix-up in less than a year at the same facility. In July 2013, a similar error occurred when a female inmate was locked in a cell with a male inmate, leading to a claim of sexual assault. In that earlier case, no charges were filed, and a test was inconclusive, with the woman refusing to cooperate with outside investigators. Following the 2013 incident, Sheriff John Layton had taken several measures intended to prevent future errors. These
He corrupted.
included reprimanding 3 deputies, ordering remedial training, and implementing new policies such as labeled and color-coded signage for cell blocks. Despite these preventive efforts, the 2014 incident demonstrated that these measures were inadequate to address the underlying issues. A key factor contributing to these errors was the facility's significant overcrowding and operational complexity. At the time of the 2014 incident, Marion County Jail was housing 936 inmates, with 264 being female. The facility comprised 71 cell blocks, with designations changing frequently, approximately 6 times per week and sometimes 2 to 3 times per day, based on operational needs. This constant flux in cell block functions likely contributed to confusion and errors in inmate placement. Indiana Jail Incident, Clark County Jail. In October 2021, what would later be described as a night of terror unfolded at the Clark County Jail in Jeffersonville, Indiana. This facility, notably featured on the A&E reality TV show 60 Days In, became the site of one of the most disturbing security breaches in recent correctional history. 28 female inmates experienced a nightmare scenario when male inmates gained unauthorized access to their housing unit. According to extensive reports and lawsuits, the attacks lasted approximately 2 hours, during which the women were subjected to sexual assaults, physical violence, threats, and intimidation. The male intruders took the disturbing step of concealing their identities by wearing towels and blankets as masks, adding to the terror experienced by the women. How did such a catastrophic security breach occur? The answer points to a shocking betrayal of trust and duty. David Lowe, a corrections officer at the facility, allegedly sold access to the female housing unit to male inmates for $1,000. This unconscionable act not only violated his professional obligations,
That's right.
but placed dozens of women in direct danger.
Women were harassed, sexually assaulted, threatened, and completely terrified. When I met with each and every one of these women, and they broke down repeatedly, you get an impression, an understanding of what these women went through.
What makes this incident particularly disturbing is the alleged failure of the jail staff to intervene despite the presence of surveillance cameras throughout the facility. The women reportedly made desperate attempts to alert authorities during the attack. As their attorney explained,
These females were doing everything they could to alert the jail staff. They were pounding on the door for help. They were hitting the buzzer on the inside of the pod in order to alert jail staff.
the
That's something serious that should never happen.
aftermath of the attack compounded the women's trauma. Rather than receiving support and protection, the victims allegedly faced punitive measures from the jail administration, including lockdowns, confiscation of personal property, and being subjected to continuous lighting for 72 hours. Perhaps most disturbing of all, reports indicate that the locks to the female pods were not changed, even though the keys remained missing, presenting an ongoing security risk to the women. The legal response to this incident came in the form of 2 federal lawsuits filed in 2022. These suits named Clark County Sheriff Jamie Knoll, David Lowe, and several other current and former jail staff as defendants, alleging violations of the women's civil rights and failure to ensure their safety. The lawsuits detailed claims of rape, assault, and intimidation, with specific allegations that the attacks were enabled by Lowe's actions and that jail officials failed to respond adequately. By September 2023, a tentative settlement had been reached for 3 federal cases related to the incident. The legal proceedings continued to progress, and by April 2024, nearly 30 women had settled their claims. The final plaintiff, who
As they should.
alleged and subsequent pregnancy, reached an agreement in March 2024. David Lowe, the former guard implicated in the incident, faces separate criminal charges, including escape, official misconduct, and trafficking with an inmate. His trial was scheduled for November 2022, but as of the latest available information, no public updates
He done for.
on the outcome have been found, leaving uncertainty about the criminal proceedings. Rikers Island Incident. The Rikers Island Correctional Complex in New York City, already notorious for its troubled history, became the center of another disturbing case in April 2022. This incident, which took place at the Rose M. Singer Women's Jail, highlights the complex intersection of transgender housing policies and inmate safety in correctional facilities. According to detailed lawsuit documents and reports, a female inmate identified in legal filings as Rose Doe was allegedly raped by a male inmate who had gained access to the female dorm by posing as a transgender woman. This troubling sequence of events unfolded over several days, beginning on April 4th, 2022, when the perpetrator first made sexual advances toward Rose Doe. The situation escalated dramatically on April 6th, when the perpetrator allegedly groped Rose Doe in the bathroom, an incident witnessed by other inmates. Just 1 day later, on April 7th, the situation culminated in the most serious allegation. Rose Doe reported being raped while she was sleeping, with the perpetrator pulling down her pants during the assault. What makes this case particularly concerning are the repeated warnings Rose Doe gave to correctional correctional staff prior to the assault. She submitted at least 2 written complaints on April 6, 2022, which were reportedly reviewed by Acting Warden Floyd Phipps. Despite these explicit warnings about the threat she faced, no action was taken to remove the perpetrator from the female dorm. The lawsuit, filed in November 2023 against New York City and 20 individuals, including correction officers Jennifer Cruz and Rashida King, makes disturbing allegations about institutional complicity in the incident. According to the legal filings, the Department of Corrections, DOC staff, allegedly instructed the male inmate to claim he was transgender to gain access to the female dorm, effectively facilitating the assault. This claim is supported by jail call transcripts in which the perpetrator allegedly admitted to another inmate that he was not transgender and was there to get PE. Further compounding these allegations, the perpetrator reportedly had a history of sexual misconduct, with jail disciplinary records